Who's the one foreclosing on your home, kicking families out onto the street, forcing you to grind your entire life just to pay off debt? Who pumps everything up sky-high stocks, houses, everything, then pops the bubble on purpose, only to scoop up those assets, those companies, those dreams at fire sale prices when it all crashes? It's the banking elite, the top 1% hiding behind the government, getting richer while you get crushed. This is their game. They create the cycles boom and bust on repeat. What they really take from you isn't money. It's your house, your land, your time, your labor, your freedom. If you don't understand the rules of finance, you'll be a wage slave forever, paying debts you never should have had to carry, because you didn't know it was rigged. This is their rigged game. Interest rates and money flows, those are the bait. Money has never been the goal. Real wealth is land, homes, your labor, your time, your freedom. Your entire worldview shifts the moment you realize the deep state isn't left or right. It's the shadow elite pulling every string. No real parties, no real sides. We're all only allowed to know what they want us to know. And yeah, every black swan event, every crisis, there's a good chance it was engineered. Wake up. Welcome to the channel, where uncomfortable truths are quietly examined. Hey, folks, wake up for a second. You turn on the news and it feels like America's running the show, the most powerful nation on earth. Presidents, prime ministers, generals, they're the ones calling the shots, right? Wrong. Dead wrong. The real power, it sits way behind the scenes. A tiny group of elites banking dynasties, massive asset managers like BlackRock and Vanguard. Central bankers pull the strings on everything. They don't run for office. They don't need votes. They control the money, and money controls everything. Look at this. BlackRock and Vanguard together manage over $20 trillion in assets. That's more than the entire U.S. economy. They own huge stakes in pretty much every major company, tech giants, banks, media, energy, you name it. They vote those shares in boardrooms, pushing policies that keep their power growing. And governments? They're drowning in debt. Right now, as we speak in late 2025, the U.S. national debt is pushing $38.4 trillion. That's over $112,000 per American citizen. Ugh. Who holds that debt? These same elites through their funds, their banks. They lend to governments, charge interest, and when things get tight, they dictate terms. Presidents come and go, but the debt machine keeps rolling, because it's designed that way. Here's the small lesson that's gonna hit you hard. These hidden players aren't left or right. They're not Democrat or Republican. They're above it all. No real sides, just one big club protecting their wealth. And you're not in it. The sooner you see that the leaders you vote for are often just frontmen for this shadow elite, the sooner you start questioning everything. Because once you do, nothing looks the same. But hold on. Understanding who really holds the power is just the start. Next, we're going to break down the 3 simple keys that explain every major crisis, every war, every boom and bust, debt, taxes, and inflation, and how they're weaponized against you. Let's dive in. All right, we're going deeper now because grasping these 3 levers is the key to seeing through the entire system. Every major disruption, crises, conflicts, economic booms that end in busts. They all hinge on 3 fundamental tools. 3 mechanisms the elite rely on to sustain their dominance and systematically redirect real wealth upward. Debt, taxes, inflation. Understand these, and the fog lifts on why things keep playing out the same way. No illusions left. Let's dissect them straight. The first lever is debt. This is the binding force on governments and individuals alike. In late 2025, the U.S. on gross national debt is around $38.4 trillion. That's more than $115,000 in debt per American citizen. Governments borrow from the elite-dominated banks and asset managers. Interest accumulates without end. It creates pressure for even more borrowing, reduced services for the public, or direct expansion of the money supply, leading seamlessly to the second lever. The second lever is taxes, presented as everyone's civic duty. But the structure loads the weight heaviest on wage earners and the middle class. The elite exploit legal structures, international arrangements, and influence to drastically reduce their exposure. Your income is taxed up front and aggressively. They safeguard and expand their holdings largely intact. You expend more effort just to maintain position. The third lever and the most deceptive is inflation, the gradual, unrelenting diminishment of money's value. Since the Federal Reserve's establishment in 1913, the dollar has lost over 97% of its purchasing power. What $1 purchased then now requires over 30. Recent data for the year ending November 2025 puts annual inflation at 2.7%. It appears controlled in reports, but the reality hits home. Persistent rises in fuel, food, and shelter that exceed typical wage growth. Pay increases might reach 3 to 4% in favorable years, but everyday costs embed higher during expansions and stay elevated. Inflation methodically diminishes savings, increases debt dependency, and shifts tangible wealth, real estate, resources, enterprises toward those who manage currency issuance. The essential lesson to grasp fully. These levers are not systemic failures. They are intentional design elements. Debt constrains and enforces compliance. Taxes harvest from the productive. Inflation quietly reallocates the balance. In combination, they secure a consistent upward extraction, insulating the elite while demanding constant effort from the rest. Overlook this interconnected design, and you're responding to illusions in a system built to disadvantage you. Recognize it, and the true architecture emerges. Now equipped with these three levers, we're prepared to examine the recurring cycle running for more than a century. The deliberate boom-bust sequence that consistently collects wealth from the majority and channels it to the minority. This is where the full picture sharpens. Now that you've seen the three levers in action: debt, taxes, inflation, let's connect them to the machine that keeps everything running. The classic boom-bust cycle. This isn't random chaos. It's a predictable pattern the elite have refined over generations to harvest wealth from the masses. Like shearing sheep, grow the wool, then cut it all off. Repeat forever. Here's how it works, step by step. Phase 1, the boom. Central banks controlled by the elite drop interest rates to rock bottom. Cheap money floods the system. Businesses borrow to expand. People take out mortgages, car loans, credit cards. Everyone feels rich. Stocks soar. Home prices explode. Jobs multiply. You think the good times will never end. But that's the trap. All that borrowing pumps up asset bubbles, houses, stocks, everything. Debt piles higher for governments, companies, families. Phase 2, the bust. When the bubble gets too big, inflation starts creeping or risks build. The banks hike rates. Suddenly, borrowing costs spike. People and businesses can't afford payments. Defaults rise. Companies lay off workers. Unemployment jumps. Assets get sold off in panic, homes foreclosed, stocks dumped. Prices crash. The elite, they wait with cash, buying everything at fire sale prices. Real example, the 2008 crisis. Rates low for years fueled the housing bubble. Millions overborrowed on subprime mortgages. When rates rose and adjustable payments reset, foreclosures exploded. Over 3 million filings in 2008 alone. Millions of families lost homes. Banks got bailed out with trillions. The elite scooped up properties and stocks cheap. Middle America got crushed. Same pattern in 1929, dot-com 2000, COVID 2020 flash crash. Always the same winners. The small but painful lesson. This cycle isn't an accident. It's engineered. Low rates lure you into debt. High rates trigger the harvest. The elite accumulate real assets, land, companies, resources, while your wealth evaporates in the crash. Believe it's just the economy, and you'll get sheared again. See the pattern? And you can start positioning differently. But this classic cycle ties directly into something even more rigged in America today. The Federal Reserve itself. The institution that controls the rates, the money, the timing of every boom and bust. Let's expose how it's the true engine behind it all. Now we've exposed the classic boom-bust cycle, the predictable machine that keeps transferring wealth upward. But who controls the switch? Who decides when to flood the system with cheap money and when to yank it away? The answer is the Federal Reserve, America's central bank, the true engine driving these endless cycles. Most people think the Fed is a government agency, federal, transparent, working for the public. It's not. The Fed is a hybrid monster, part public-owned, part private. Created in secret back in 1913 by banking elites on Jekyll Island. 12 regional banks owned by private member banks. The Board of Governors appointed by the president. But the real power sits with the FOMC deciding interest rates and money supply. They print dollars out of thin air through bond purchases and QE, expand the balance sheet to trillions, and control the federal funds rate, the benchmark for everything from mortgages to credit cards. Real example, the aftermath of 2008. The Fed slashed rates near zero, launched massive QE buying trillions in assets, fueled the longest bull market ever, but also inflated housing and stocks to insane levels. Then, to fight the inflation they helped create, they hiked rates aggressively in 2022-2023. Triggered pain for borrowers. In late 2025, they've started cutting again down to around 3.5–3.75% range after several reductions this year. Setting up the next boom? While the national debt climbs toward 38 to 39 trillion, the small but critical lesson. The Fed isn't neutral. It's the tool that enables the cycle. Low rates lure debt and bubbles. High rates or even pauses trigger busts. The elite positioned in hard assets win both ways. You relying on wages and savings, you get caught in the churn. Deny its power, and you're at the mercy of their timing. Understand it, and you see why independence claims ring hollow. It's deeply intertwined with the shadow players we talked about. But the Fed doesn't operate alone in this rigged arena. Wall Street giants and the real estate machine work hand in hand to amplify the wealth transfer. Let's pull back the curtain on those traps next. We've seen how the Federal Reserve pulls the strings on interest rates and money supply, fueling the endless boom-bust cycles. But the Fed doesn't act alone. The real amplification. The massive wealth transfer happens through two intertwined traps: Wall Street's casino and the real estate machine. These are the biggest engines sucking wealth from everyday Americans and funneling it to the elite. First, Wall Street. Big banks and asset managers create complex products, derivatives, margin lending, high-frequency trading that let them profit no matter which way the market goes. They pump stocks during booms, encourage retail investors to pile in with easy credit. Then, when the bust hits, they trigger margin call, force sales, and buy back low. Institutions like BlackRock and Vanguard managing trillions own huge stakes in everything, influencing prices and policies behind the scenes. Now, the even bigger trap, real estate. This is the ultimate wealth extractor in America. Back around 2000, the median home price was about $120,000. In late 2025, it's pushing $400,000 to $430,000, over 3 times higher. Wages, Average hourly earnings have roughly doubled nominally. But after inflation, real purchasing power has barely budged for most workers. Result, homes are far less affordable. You need way more income or massive debt to buy the same house. Home ownership rate? It peaked around 69% in the mid-2000s, crashed after 2008, and now hovers in the mid-65% range, lower than 25 years ago for many demographics. Meanwhile, institutional investors firms tied to BlackRock, Vanguard, and others have scooped up millions of single-family homes, turning them into rentals. They bid cash, outcompete families, drive prices higher. Rents soar because supply gets locked up. You pay more to live, while they collect passive income and appreciation. The small but unforgiving lesson. These aren't free markets. They're designed transfer mechanisms. Wall Street gamifies investing so small, players lose long-term. Real estate inflates assets beyond wage growth, pricing out the middle class and creating a renter class dependent on landlords. The elite accumulate properties and shares. You get debt and higher costs. Chase the American dream of home ownership without seeing this, and you're funding their empire. Spot the traps, and you realize true wealth isn't in overpriced houses or volatile stocks, it's in understanding the game. But those pump and dump schemes on Wall Street and the shifting phases of the cycle today, they're playing out right in front of us with real scandals and clear signals for what's coming in the next few years. Let's break down the modern versions and the warnings you can't ignore. We've exposed how Wall Street and the real estate machine act as massive wealth vacuums, pulling money from regular folks straight to the elite. But those aren't the only scams running. The system has modern tricks to pump and dump schemes that lure you in with hype, and the shifting phases of the cycle playing out right now in late 2025. These are the sharpest tools for quick, brutal transfers. First, the classic pump and dump updated for today's markets. Insiders or fraudsters quietly accumulate cheap shares in obscure stocks, meme coins, or hyped companies. They spread wild stories, social media buzz, fake news, AI-generated hype promising moonshot returns. Retail investors pile in, driving prices sky high. Then the dump. The scammers sell at the peak, crashing the price and wiping out latecomers. Real examples keep happening. In 2024-2025, we've seen surges in complaints about ramp and dump scams using WhatsApp groups and impersonated advisors to push penny stocks. FBI reports a 300% jump in victims. Crypto side, platforms like Pump. Fund spawned hundreds of micro-cap tokens pumped via social coordination, then rug pulled, draining millions. Even legit companies. Remember the frenzy around certain Chinese micro-caps listing in the US? Prices exploding thousands of % before collapsing. The elite or connected players walk away rich. You get left holding worthless bags. Now tie this to the modern cycle phases we're in. The opponent's transcript nailed the 4 stages, and late 2025 shows clear signs. Phase 1 and 2, recovery and boom. Fed cuts rates again this year. Cheap money flowing. Stocks hitting records. AI hype pumping valuations. Phase 3 creeping in. Inflation sticky around 2.7%. Job growth slowing. Yield curve normalizing, but tariffs and uncertainty adding drag. Phase 4 risks rising. Leading indicators point to slowdown into early 2026, possible mild recession if growth dips below 1 or 2%. Investors buying nearly 30% of homes in recent quarters, locking up supply, keeping prices elevated around 410,000, 420,000 median. Signals watch rising unemployment ticks, inventory builds in some markets, or sudden rate pauses. The small but vital lesson. These scams and phase shifts aren't isolated. They're symptoms of the rigged cycle. Hype pulls you in at peaks. Crashes let insiders buy low, fall for the pump without reading the phase. And you're the fuel for their profits. Spot the signals early, and you can step aside or even position against the herd. But most Americans keep repeating the same deadly mistakes in this system, chasing illusions while the transfer accelerates. Let's lay out those traps next, so you can finally stop feeding the machine. We've seen the pump and dump scams and the shifting cycle phases pulling people in at the worst times. Late 2025 signals showing the boom peaking while risks build. But why do so many fall for it, cycle after cycle? Because most Americans keep making the same deadly mistakes in this rigged game. Mistakes that guarantee the wealth transfer keeps flowing upward. Here are the biggest ones, raw and unfiltered. Mistake 1. Loading up on high-interest debt. Average household credit card debt is around $9,000 to $11,000 in late 2025, with rates over 20%. People use cards for everyday expenses, paying minimums that barely touch principal. Interest compounds, trapping you in a hole while banks rake in billions. Student loans. Average borrower owes nearly $39,000, payments eating years of income. Mistake 2. Living paycheck to paycheck with no buffer. Surveys show 57% to 67% of Americans are one missed check from disaster. Over half have less emergency savings than credit card debt or none at all. No rainy day fund means any surprise car repair. Medical bill forces more borrowing or selling assets low. Mistake 3. Chasing home ownership or stocks at peaks without real understanding. Home ownership rates stuck around 65%, lower than decades ago for younger groups. People max 30-year mortgages when prices are inflated, locking in high payments. Then rates rise, equity vanishes and busts. In 401ks, average balances lag. Many in their 50s and 60s under $300,000 because they buy high during hype. Panic sell low. Mistake 4. Relying solely on wages and traditional safe investments without hard assets. Inflation and cycles erode paper wealth. No diversification into things that hold value during transfers. The small but unforgiving lesson. These aren't personal failures. They're predictable outcomes of playing by rules written against you. Keep borrowing to keep up, skip the buffer, chase bubbles, and you voluntarily hand over your time, labor, and future to the machine. Break even one pattern like cutting consumer debt ruthlessly and you start retaining more. Ignore them all, and the cycle harvests you again. But it doesn't have to stay this way. There are real strategies to protect yourself, to build wealth outside the traps and survive the game on your terms. Let's lay out the Red Pill Protection Plan next, with steps you can take right now. We've laid out the deadly mistakes most Americans keep repeating: loading up on debt, no emergency buffer, chasing peaks, relying on wages alone that feed the rigged system cycle after cycle. But you don't have to stay trapped. Here's the Red Pill Protection Plan: practical, no-nonsense steps to safeguard your money and freedom right now, in late 2025. No illusions, just actions that work against inflation and cycles. First, eliminate high-interest debt ruthlessly. Average household credit card balance sits around $9,000 to $11,000 with rates over 20%. Pay minimums and interest eats you alive. Attack it aggressively: debt snowball or avalanche method. Real example. Families who paid off $10,000 in cards freed up hundreds monthly, building wealth instead of feeding banks. Second, build a cash buffer of 3 to 6 months' expenses. Over half of Americans live paycheck to paycheck, one emergency from disaster. Start small, $1,000 first, then grow. High-yield savings accounts offer 4 to 5% now, beating inflation slightly. Third, shift to hard assets that outpace inflation. Gold has risen over 70% this year, trading around $4,400, $4,500 per ounce. Physical gold or ETFs hold value when dollars weaken. Silver, too cheaper entry. Industrial demand. Bitcoin, despite volatility, has compounded massively for holders who avoid leverage. Fourth, Invest in quality equities and real assets for long-term. Stocks historically beat inflation. S&P averages 10% annually long-term. Focus on dividend growers, not hype. Rental property or REITs if you can. Rents rise with inflation. Fifth, upskill and diversify income. Wages like essentials. Side hustles. Skills in demand. Many doubled income streams. The small but powerful lesson. Protection isn't about timing markets perfectly. It's about reducing vulnerabilities, debt, single income, and owning assets the system can't easily devalue. Do nothing and the cycle harvests you. Act now. And you reclaim control over your time and freedom. This is your wake up. The game is rigged, but you can play smarter. Start today. Cut one bad debt. Buy 1 ounce of gold or silver. Build that buffer. Share this if it hit home. Comment your first step below. Subscribe for more truth, no fluff, just reality. Wake up. Protect what's yours.